Hi, I'm Scott Dickerson.
Hi, I'm Audrey Cotter.
We're sitting on a little floating dock we just came across here in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. And that's our boat behind us, the Alaskan Gypsy, that we're humbled and honored to live aboard 4 seasons here in Alaska. Well, this little dock was calling our name. We brought these chairs over here on our paddle boards, and we wanted to talk about uh, what it feels like and what might be going on in your life when you're in your late 30s, early 40s, and things just aren't feeling like you hoped they would. If you are like me or Audrey, maybe you spent your 20s and 30s climbing towards things, pursuing goals, trying to evolve your life, your family, your relationships, your career, your spirituality, your abilities, your fitness, everything. And then you're in your late 30s, early 40s, and you're starting to feel like maybe you don't even want to reach your goals anymore. Maybe you're in a career that you don't even feel like you want to advance in anymore. You just want to quit, buy a cabin in the woods, and leave it all behind. Maybe you've had enough of society, your family, your relationships, your coworkers, your whole career. Maybe you're ready for a total change in your body, in what you do with your time, your thoughts, all these things. And if you're in this phase of life, late 30s, early 40s, stay tuned. We got a few thoughts on that from our own experience and some of our studies and contemplations.
Unfortunately, maybe like you, my motivations in my 20s and 30s weren't totally aligned with my truth. They were laced in fear and a lot of discomfort, shame, and just a really skewed belief system. I grew up in trauma, and it's taken me a lot of decades to rewire my mind in those experiences, which you might relate to. So I knew in my heart I wanted to be a mother. I knew in my heart that I really desired to have a family, a normal, healthy family, something that I longed for so deeply as a child. And I also knew that I wanted to help people. I'm a nurturer and a caregiver at heart. And I went about these things in the most forceful way possible, being with a man that I knew wasn't really good for me and trying to make that family happen. Also, forcing myself into a career that I thought would provide me the most flexibility and the most abundant opportunities to help others, but also make money on my own time, in my own spaces and places. I ended up.
Carl Jung says that there's two phases of life, two halves of life. And the break in them is around your 40s, early 40s, late 30s. And he says that you develop and build and create, expand, and learn to know the world, create your space, and establish yourself, build your kingdom or whatever in your 20s, 30s. Starts when you're a teen sometimes. And mine was fortunate. I was blessed to grow up in a healthy family with virtually no trauma. I didn't have any major fears or problems. We had a modest life, but it was a healthy life. And so I had the good fortune of being able to go through my 20s and 30s. Instead of running from things, I was really chasing things. And I was pursuing my passions or interests with great zeal. And it was fun, and it created a lot of incredible experiences. Um, it was very sort of typical first half of life stuff. I had a surfing business. I guided people surfing around Alaska. I had a 20 plus year photography career. I commercial fished. I did all the things that looked fanciful to me and interesting, and ended up achieving a lot of them. And in my late 30s, I had a big house in a beautiful town, had 3 kids, a wife, a stay-at-home job. Everything was looking pretty good. Most people struggle with change. I think it's pretty universal, and there's terms like midlife crisis, and I think everybody has some kind of experience of transition. And it would be nice to think that maybe we could just evolve from our 30s to our 40s and beyond, and just open our hands and release what no longer serves us, and let go of old relationships, and welcome new experiences in life and new careers and new places to call home. I think that it's more common for us, the human race, to have to get things kind of ripped out of our hands a little bit. We get to be the biggest caterpillar, we eat all the leaves, we take over the whole tree, and then at some point we're done being a caterpillar, but we might not know it. I think this is why it's called the midlife crisis. When you crawl in that cocoon, it's usually not in a state of ecstasy or happiness. So I had my own experience, which we'll get to later. How did your transitional phase feel? What was it like for you?
Yeah, well, one of my biggest goals and desires in life was to have a family and to show my kids a different way of living. And I would say I woke up one day, but I also kind of always knew under the surface. My daughter was 1 year old, she's my youngest. And I just realized that the way I was living was going to be a mirror of what I experienced as a child, unfortunately. And I knew that she wasn't going to learn by what I said, but by what I did. So I kind of had that take the bull by the horns moment. I started exercising every day. I started enriching myself in different cognitive and behavioral patterns that would help me evolve in my mind. I started to recognize unhealthy relational patterns in my life and started making some changes in my career to try and fit more of the essence of like what I wanted to change and what I wanted to achieve. I also faced my healthcare risks of this BRCA1 genetic mutation and also took that bull by the horns and had a couple of pretty big risk reducing operations. I also surrendered using food or alcohol or anything else to help me in my coping. And I just kind of let all of that go actually early in 2017. So that was 5 years after my daughter was 1. So I'd been working on these changes for 4 years. And then 5 years later, I just said, take it. I'm not going to try and hold on to any of this anymore. My unhealthy marriage and my own unhealthy relating patterns with myself and also my fear with this medical situation. And that was the year for me, everything changed.
So did you feel like you responded to a desire to change, or change came at you from the outside?
It felt like, I mean, I had a desire to change, absolutely. But I also felt like I didn't really have a choice. Like I had this little voice inside of me that was like, this isn't how you're meant to live. Like, you're going to die if you keep living this way. You are repeating patterns that you are here to break. And so it was external, it was in my face, but it was also, it was really that voice inside.
So I think in life we find our flow. We try to find what feels downstream. And when you're 20s and 30s, it's outward. It's building. It's developing. It's creating, and that feels like it's in the flow. Business is exciting. Strengthening your body is exciting. Overcoming challenges is exciting. Advancing in your career is energizing and done with great enthusiasm. And get into your late 30s, you start to see, gosh, I got the family now. It doesn't feel that good. For me, it's like I have the career, I had some great success in all of the aspects that I pursued, but after I succeeded a few times, I started to realize that, what am I going to do this forever? Am I going to become fixated on a goal, reach the goal, and then be like, what's next? I think it's typical that life in that time period brings in some transition. It can well up inside of you as that feeling where you wake up in the morning and what used to motivate you to jump out of bed and run all day feels completely pointless.
Yeah.
And you'd just rather stay in bed because there's nothing left in it. It can also come through some sort of crisis.
Right.
A lot of people I observe experience this, and the trick with that is life needs to change. If you're in your late 30s or early 40s, it's time for your life to change. And you can either welcome that change and start to let go of things and start to turn your boat downstream instead of upstream, But the trick can be is, do you know that the current has changed? Are you aware that it's time to change? Maybe you were motivated by this career goal or by this relationship desire or whatever it is for 20 years. It may have held your energy and your enthusiasm for 20 years, and then you get habituated to it, and it's uncomfortable to realize that maybe it's over. And this is what Carl Jung says is, it's the second half of life. It's different than the first half. And you have an opportunity there to transition with grace and ease, or the universe to smack you down until you finally let go in your pile of ashes. And I think we all experience it a little different. We'll share our own personal experiences. Audrey did a little bit already on how that went. But the key thing here is to know that it happens, so that you can approach that period of your life with awareness instead of wondering why everything is falling apart. Why is my job not motivating? Why are my coworkers on my nerves? Why do I not even care if I become the CEO? It's not fulfilling to remodel my home anymore. I'm done. Well, I hope this video can give you a little bit of confidence and awareness around the fact that maybe you're sensing a shift in the tide, and maybe it's time to turn your path with the current again. It might be different than it was 20 years ago, and don't be too disappointed or depressed or hold on too tightly in that moment.
I did, unfortunately, experience a couple of big events in my life that kind of forced these changes to happen quite a bit sooner. I would confidently say that I was really trying to make these changes inside without having any of these external shifts in my life. I didn't want to get divorced. I didn't want to lose the big house on the hill. I didn't want the family to break up. I didn't want to lose family members or experience more trauma in my life. But it happened. And a couple of weeks after one of my big operations, my former husband thought it was a good time to move out, which honestly was the perfect time for me to finally accept what I already knew, and that was no longer a healthy space to be in for me or for him. And additionally, a few years after that, my dad, who was like my best friend and my person, he suddenly died, and that changed me deeply. And it really shifted my perspective on life. And I couldn't play the game anymore. I couldn't pretend anymore. And I had a very dramatic shift where I no longer could live inspired by fear. And I did a deep evaluation of every decision I had ever made in my life that had led me to that point. And it was all from fear. It wasn't from my true nature or my God-given desires. So those events, although, very difficult to go through, they also met with an open mind and met with the capacity to know that my heart cracked open multiple times, but not to constrict back together, but to actually grow back bigger. The foundation of the house disrupted and completely fractured, not to provide me with no home, but to be able to rebuild in a way that was actually more aligned and true to my own essence and who I was. So with that letting go and with that surrender internally, I really believe it allowed the universe to provide the opportunities that I needed to get back in the right stream, to get back in the right flow, which I really never had been in before in this lifetime.
My experience of transition in my late 30s and 40s was I was living basically in the glory of achieving my goals to a great extent and not enjoying it very much. I had a good life, and even such a good life that I couldn't really see any problems with it, but there's a different plan for me, obviously, and it came through an unexpected divorce. 3 kids, nice house, good career, no financial worries, just a really, from the outside, beautiful expression of a healthy life and family. But inside, change was brewing, and there was no way I was ever going to let go of that life. It fit my ideals, my youthful ideals. I had reached some sort of goals that I had set out for me in my 20s and 30s, and I was not going to willingly let go of that. Not to mention just the fears of what is this going to do for my children and what is life going to look like. So it was a big letting go. It was very uncomfortable. I'm very fortunate, I think, that pretty early on in the process, I realized that for one, I couldn't stop it. And for two, I might as well just embrace it and hope for the best. If the current is going that way, I figured I might as well try and paddle downstream instead of upstream. And for me, that looked like practicing letting go and practicing letting love or blessing or abundance come into place of what I was holding on to so tight. And it was a painful transition for sure, financially concerning. All of my relationships were in a bit of turmoil, and it was a chance to completely reboot life. Not that I was really looking for, but I could feel that change was going to be good. And I can tell you that I had no idea where it was heading. And when the house of cards finally does fall down, it can be very scary and confusing and easy to focus on the negative. If you feel like you're swimming upstream, it's pretty easy to feel like it's not going very well. Can take quite a bit of courage to think that just maybe, just maybe you should turn around and go with the current. That could look like letting go of a career, letting go of a relationship that is beyond repair, letting go of an ideal, maybe a religious belief framework that you grew up in, whatever. Everybody's unique. Audrey and I both had our experiences, and I just hope that you can identify yourself in some of this stuff, because it's not something that you go through alone at that period of life. Everybody experiences some sort of major transition in their late 30s and early 40s, and this video is to hopefully encourage you to find peace and find your way through it with as little excessive suffering as possible. Sounds like the Eagles have something to say. So what does it look like after it all falls apart? After you realize you can't go on living the way you are, and it's the dark night of the soul. You feel hopeless. You feel like everything in your life that you've created and fought for and built and drug yourself through the mud to accomplish all of a sudden feels worthless, and you don't even want it. What happens when you look at your possessions and you realize they're possessing you?
Yeah.
And the things that you wanted a year ago or last month, now they feel like burdens. What do you do? How do you proceed? What do you get out of bed for in the morning when the very things that motivated you before have either disappeared or no longer appeal to you at all? What kept you going?
What kept me going? Honestly, I started looking at things quite a bit differently. I realized that pretty much everything I was doing was draining me, even after the divorce. When I was making the career transitions, I didn't get out of nursing. Sorry, I'm a little distracted by the Eagles. I didn't get out of nursing until like 6 years after my divorce. So what kept me going there for a while was sustaining the life that I felt like I needed to, but also I started to practice more awareness. I started to pay attention each day. What was taking away my energy? What was creating a space of neutrality with my energy? And what was filling me up? I also started to check my motives. Was I doing things out of fear or ego, or was I doing things because it truly felt aligned for me? And those two practices mentally really shifted my framework and my experience of life. And I started to take note. And what kept me going was just knowing that I was evolving and changing into the woman that I was meant to be. and that I no longer had to live in toxicity or discomfort, that I could rediscover myself. I could discover myself for the first time without the impact of the trauma from others. I could embrace that freedom. And although it felt lonely a lot, this journey of evolution and awakening felt incredibly lonely, it was also very invigorating and very inspiring. I also knew that I was recovering from being laced in codependent relationships my entire life. And the real thing that kept me going was a trust and a faith, that knowing that if I was facing forward, facing towards the sunshine, facing towards my true nature, then everything was going to work out. And if relationships, even the ones with my family, if they fell apart or they shifted, that's okay, because I no longer was available to live in the ways that I had been living. So my inspiration was truth. My inspiration was trust. My inspiration was faith, and just a really deep, soul burning need to come into contact with the woman that I am and I'm meant to be, and not being available to play small or settle for less anymore at all. I just basically had it. So
I was thinking about this the other day, and I realized that when you encounter a major midlife crisis or transition, it sort of can feel like you have everything on your table, your workbench, whatever it is, your desk, and it gets flipped upside down or it gets tipped over. Everything's on the floor. And I didn't want to just pick everything back up and put it back on the desk anymore, because you know what? I wasn't really happy with what I had on the desk. I wasn't ready to wipe it all off, but it just got wiped all off. So I had a blank tabletop, empty workshop, empty workbench. And so I remember very clearly thinking, well, you know, this would be a great time to think carefully about what I put back on that desk. How do I put it there? What do I want there? And another good analogy for it is, imagine that you're carrying a bucket and there's a lot of stuff in your bucket. And by the time you're 40 years old, you got a lot of things in your bucket that you're carrying. It's family, your birth family, your own family maybe, all the relationships you've developed, all of the skills and careers, all of the assets that you've acquired, all of the things, the emotional, relational, physical, health baggage, all these things. And what if your bucket gets dumped out? I think most people experience this. They call it a midlife crisis usually, but it's when everything you know in your life gets mixed up. And I had the awareness of thinking, you know, I'm going to be careful what I put back in my bucket. I don't want to end up carrying that same load of stuff. And so I felt like I was starting in a really fantastic spot, because I had a lot of skills, I had a lot of friends, I had a lot of assets and abilities, but altogether they were too much. And I didn't want them all. I didn't want to be pursuing them all. I didn't want to be chained down into all of the things that I had developed and grown in my 20s and 30s. So this kind of brings us to the second chapter of life, and it's not meant to look like the first chapter. And the main difference is that, as Carl Jung says, it's time to turn inwards. The first half of life is outward. It's your attention going out towards life and things and people and relationships. And your second half of life is meant to be totally different. So it's to turn around and look inward. And it's not to say you're going to become a hermit in the woods or live on a sailboat, but you might. And the real point of it is, it's a time to exercise your discernment and your wisdom. It's not a time to build and amass and grow. It's a time to enjoy and appreciate and contemplate. And the first thing to contemplate is, how do you want your life to be? What do you want in your life? What do you want to motivate your existence? What do you want to get out of bed for in the morning? And you've had a lot of experience now. You've tried a lot of things. You've done a lot of things. Got to know a lot of people. Maybe you've made a lot of money, or maybe you've figured out a lot of ways not to make money, or to live frugally, or whatever it is. But you have the wealth of experience behind you now, and it's time to use the wisdom you've gathered, the lessons you've learned, and design a life that actually is in alignment with what feels good to you and what you actually want. Not out of panic, not out of fear, not out of just chasing your lusts or passions for things, but out of lived experience wisdom. And now is the perfect opportunity to start making those little tiny choices that lead to incredible dreams coming true, whatever it is. Baby steps. Well, it's actually Valentine's Day, 2026, ironically. And behind us is a great big red boat in that beam of golden sun. We're in southeast Alaska, and it's a rare sunny day and calm. It's incredibly gorgeous. But Audrey and I actually met. I was really just coming out of a major transitional period in my life. The butterfly was in the cocoon still, but trying to figure out what new life was going to look like. And I knew that I wanted to share it with somebody. And we met at about that time. She was a couple years ahead of me in her life transition. And so we met each other, and our ideals for our second half of life aligned very, very well. And what it looked like was a lot of letting go, and then letting go, and then letting go, and then getting things ripped out of our hands, and then letting go, and then getting some more things ripped out of our hands. This sometimes involved the court, it sometimes involved finances, a lot of custody things, lifestyle things. If I look back, and if there's any one thing that I did right through that whole period, was I accepted the change that was getting forced down my throat. Because in the end, we're living a life now that is quite honestly beyond what I was capable of dreaming.
Same.
And that's a hard thing to fathom. Imagine a life that you can't even imagine. Take what you think might be amazing, and then square it, times it by itself. And for me, that's what that boat is back there. I never dreamed of a boat that amazing, and especially not one that I could live on and call our home. And it's been baby steps. It was baby steps into a rental. It was baby steps selling my dream home in a divorce litigation battle. It was helping Audrey sell her home, her second step home, her purgatory home. It was letting go of all of the aspects. Trust me, there was lots in there. And I just realized you have to let go. You have to open your hands to receive.
Right.
You cannot receive when you're gripping hard. And my experience, which I hope would be yours, is if you open your hands wide, you might be amazed what comes in. The blessings that are out there for you are beyond your wildest comprehension if you can let go and be open to receive. That's what I think. I hope that your experience is not different than that. But that was the journey for me, and we live on a boat year-round. It's an amazing boat. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of risk. It took a lot of letting go of what other people will think, how this is going to work with custody, schedules, and family and relationships. How is it going to work financially? All of the what ifs kind of had to just be let go of too. You have to let go of your fears sometimes and take baby steps. We took baby steps before we knew where the path was going. We started to let go of things that didn't feel right, those things that make your skin crawl. If you live in a place where you don't feel at ease, maybe you're not meant to be there. Maybe you were meant to be there a year ago or a decade ago, but maybe you're not anymore. And I can tell you, we wouldn't be living on a boat if we had stuck with what we thought was best 10 years ago.
Right.
It's different,
It's very different.
wildly different. That's because this is the second half of life, and it's not meant to look like the first. I think it's meant to be way better and more fulfilling and more in alignment. Your first half of life, you're pursuing and chasing and going after. Your second half of life, hopefully, you're getting to know yourself and you're experiencing a life that's in alignment with what feels right, not with what your parents think is right or society tells you is right, but what is actually your own unique expression. Because that's really all that matters. As long as you're not causing harm to people, the best thing you can do is learn to follow your inner light. Learn to follow those things that feel good and right when you're doing them, when you think about them, and when you're done. So that's what it's looked like. That's what spreading my butterfly wings has looked like in the second half of life, is taking baby steps with a lot of blind faith and letting go of things that I once pursued. Letting the house burn. Maybe it's time. Maybe you need to rebuild a new house in a different place from the ashes there.
For me, having the opportunity to let go of so many things in such a significant way and receive support during that journey allowed a deeper level of healing from the trauma that I had been kind of living in the shadow of. And in that space, the real blessings of getting to know myself and my own gifts and the work that lights me up and makes me excited to jump out of bed every day. Like for the first time in my life, I'm 42 years old, and just within the last couple of years, I'm doing work that doesn't feel like work. And it actually brings me so much fulfillment and joy. And to me, that's a very powerful gift. No longer is it doing things or living in a way that I felt like I have to. It's living in a way that feels truthful and in alignment, not just for myself, but just for the universe. And so deeply grateful for that. There's been so much letting go along the way. There's been so many surrenders. Before I met Scott, I had a deep surrender of I'm only available for a relationship that will assist in the spiritual evolution of my journey, because I realized that that was the most important thing for me in this lifetime. And once I was, able to surrender everything else, that just popped right in the door. So getting to know yourself along the journey, allowing the space, allowing the grace, looking at your experiences with love and compassion and acceptance, and not fighting, and allowing change to happen, allowing the universe to support you and love you along the way is incredibly powerful. And life can drastically change in just a few years. For you too. And it doesn't have to be drastic. Sorry, just saying, sometimes it can be subtle. The change can be within. Your entire external world can remain the same, but you can feel and experience life differently.
Yeah. So if you just turned 40 and you're wondering what to do with yourself, what to do with your life, here's what I've learned in my experience is just do your best job of being you. It sounds simple, and I know it seems kind of silly, but I think really that's probably the best advice I could give somebody. It sounds easy, but it's not actually for most of us. You probably have spent a lot of your time trying to learn the world around you, trying to learn what other people want you to do, how to make people happy, how to avoid pain, how to avoid your fears, and how to get your little dopamine hits, your little successes. But now I think it's time to risk things a lot bigger. It's time to really listen to your guidance, your inner voice. And if you don't know what that is, start practicing. Practice small. The thing that you owe the world is to be you. That's it. The best version, the most unique, the most alive and enthusiastic version of you. And it's different for every person. Your greatest challenges in life are probably your greatest teachers. If something feels like it's too much or it's too big, look for the lesson in it and evolve. It's time. It's time for you to have a new life. It's time for you to break out of your old molds, and become a butterfly, or become the most beautiful rose, or become the biggest buck, whatever it is. It's time to express your unique voice, your unique talent, your unique art, your unique skill in the best way that you can. I hope that is encouraging. I hope you leave a comment below and tell us how you're changing your life, what your metamorphosis is going to look like, or what it feels like right now. If you leave a comment, we'll read it and we'll do our best to respond, and wish you the best. And I hope that, like Audrey and I, you find an incredibly blessed existence, living out dreams that you didn't even dream, experiencing things that just seem too good to be true day after day. It's out there for you. Don't give up.